Well, good morning. Looks like we got more here today. That's always a good sign. We're glad you're with us. I hope you profit from what I've chosen to talk about. Philosopher J.L. Mackie, it takes me a minute to get my breath. Philosopher J.L. Mackie, he was one of the most prominent philosophers in the 20th century. He was an atheist. He wrote an article one time. It was titled Evil and Omnipotence. This is what we were discussing the past 2 or 3, 4 weeks about the existence of God and human suffering. It doesn't seem compatible. And when you look at it, on the surface, it doesn't seem compatible. But when we dig into and find out the purposes behind suffering, the value, potential value, I should say, it starts to make sense to us. And the more we learn, of course, the more we understand. Mackie didn't understand it at all. And he had some hateful things to say about the Lord and about the Bible in general. He intended to show in this article not that religious beliefs lack rational support, but they are positively irrational. The things we believe are irrational. I take issue with that, of course. I think it's rational, where he thinks it's irrational. And he goes on to say that the several parts of the essential theological doctrine are inconsistent with one another. I deny that also. But he spread a lot of venom throughout the country while he lived. He died back in 81, I think. 81 or 87, I forgot. He spread a lot of venom, but it appears now at least that the philosophy he clung to is being debunked by most educated people, I should say, I guess. I'm going to pursue this by just raising a question. Why do you want to go to heaven? What's your reason behind it? One of the first things that come to my mind is I can't stay here. If there's one thing I've become satisfied with, when I was young, I think I thought I could live forever. But I gotten a little older and things are starting to wear out. And I think we can't stay here. Sooner or later, we got to get out of the way. Is this belief positively irrational? I can't think of a person that would say it was positively irrational, besides Mackie. Well, a lot of his cohorts would. But I think most people would find that to be a rational belief. I can't stay here, and I want to make preparation to be where I want to be when I have to leave here, if there is a place to be. I think that's rational thinking myself. In Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27, Hebrews author stated what we all know: it is appointed and man wants to die. People are looking for that magic bullet that's going to give life eternally on the earth. People are trying to stay young looking. They're trying to prolong their life in a variety of ways. And it seems to me that it's been a lot of time spent in vain. Back in David's day, he said that the span of a man's life was 70, and if perchance he got to live up to 80. Well, I looked it up the other day, and the average lifespan today is 73. All these years trying to prolong life, and we're still where David was, and that was 3,000 years ago. It don't seem to be making a lot of progress in that area. Why? Because it's appointed by God that we got to die. He don't want us to stay here. He only wanted us to be here for a little while, and then he wants us to leave. because he's got other plans for us, is what we discover in the Bible. In Genesis 3:19, Adam had sinned against God, and God imposed punishment because of that sin. Adam, he didn't have to work by the sweat of his face in the Garden of Eden. That was all about to change. Because now by the sweat of your face you will eat bread till you return to the ground. For out of it, out of the ground, you were taken. Remember, that's how God formed Adam, was out of the ground. And he goes on to state, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. That, of course, is what happens at death. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 20, Solomon said, all go to one place. It's appointed that a man wants to die, and all go to one place. All are from the dust, and all return to the dust. We go back to the place of origin, where God made the first man, Adam. In Ecclesiastes 12 and 7, again from Solomon, he said, then the dust will return to the earth as it was. It seems pretty consistent to me, huh? I don't see contradiction between the various verses in the Bible. They seem to all be in harmony. Mackey said they were in disagreement. They were irrational. I don't see irrational or disagreement in either one of these cases. In James 2:26, James is giving us a definition for death. The body without the spirit. That constitutes death. If that's true, and it is, then life is the body with the spirit. Just the opposite. It's not hard to figure out when life begins. If you can find out when the spirit enters the body, you know when life begins. The riddle's solved. It's not so difficult. And when you find out when the spirit leaves the body, you know when death occurs. Very simple definition of life and death in the Bible. Well, we notice that from James that the body is what's dead. Well, what about the spirit? Well, the body returns to the dust. We've seen that. Where does the spirit go? That's what we haven't seen. There's a separation that occurs at death. The body goes back to the earth and the spirit goes somewhere. It's not going to be here. It goes somewhere else. About the spirit, some of the characteristics. When we say about the spirit, we're talking about ourselves. That's us. That's the part of us that thinks. That's the part of us that loves. The part of us that despises or hates. All these qualities or characteristics, these are the product of our soul, our spirit. Hunger, that's a product of the human body. Various type of lusts we experience, these are all products of the human body. But when you get into the characteristics of men and women, you're talking now about the spirit of the person. Very different, like a people are very different from a dog. A dog is a body without a spirit, but a person isn't. A person is a spirit, and a person without a spirit is dead. At least the body's dead, because the spirit that animated the body, it's gone. It's gone somewhere else. In Genesis 2 and 7, the Lord formed man of the dust of the ground. He breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. It's kind of simple to see how this happened. First, the body was formed. Second, the spirit was formed. And when the spirit and body were both formed, that constitutes man. Man is a generic term for both men and women in many cases in the Bible, and that's how it's used here. The spirit joined to the body equals a human being. The dust will return to the earth as it was, Solomon said, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. So that's the answer to that question. The body is dead, James 2:26. Death ends one's earthly existence. The people we loved who died, they're not with us anymore. Those relationships have been temporarily severed, we hope and pray. But the spirit lives. So where's Mama at? The person that loved me was my mama. She was spirit. When she died, her spirit exited her body. Her body went back to the dust. Where's her spirit at now? That's what should be important to us. Where does God keep the people we love? Where do they exist? We're told in the Bible it's a place called Hades. The word Hades, to a lot of people, the word Hades means hell. That's a improper translation of the word. The word Hades means the place of unseen, or the unseen. To the Jewish mind, it was the place of disembodied spirits. When they thought about Hades, or where the spirit went, they thought about the place where God keeps spirits that are out of their body. The body went back to the dust. The spirit has gone to Hades. In Luke chapter 16, the Lord told us about a historical account. Some people say it's a parable. I don't believe it's a parable at all. I believe it's two people that the Lord actually knew, whether previous to his becoming man or during his lifetime, I cannot tell. But I'm sure he's talking about two people that he was very aware of, and that was the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man died. He went to Hades. He went to a place of torment in Hades. Lazarus died. He too went to Hades, but he went to a place identified as Abraham's bosom in Hades. Two men died. Their bodies returned to the dust, and they went to Hades, each one did, but they went to two different parts of Hades, the place where God keeps disembodied spirits. One to be tormented, one to be cuddled. Jesus told the thief on the cross, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Now, paradise is the same thing as Abraham's bosom, the meaning is. But it fascinates me that sometime on Friday evening, just a little time before Jesus and the thief would die, Jesus made a promise to that man. Today, before the sun goes down, today you and I are going to paradise. Jesus' body would go back to the tomb. The thief was probably thrown over in the garbage dump. Their bodies, in theory, were returning to the dust. Their spirits returned to God who gave it. And both went to a place called paradise. That's the same as Abraham's bosom. The Bible teaches that life on earth is just a moment in our existence, just a moment. When you look at the grand scheme of things, this isn't a heartbeat to what's to come. Because once God created us, we are created as immortal beings. We will never die. We're not eternal like God, but we are immortal. We had a point at which we began when God fused the spirit within the body. We began, but we'll never cease to exist. The person you are, the thinking part within you, the feeling part, the loving part, the caring part, that person will never stop existing. I find that absolutely fascinating. We shall know one another in heaven, according to the Bible. We have an example given to us about the patriarch Abraham. God made a promise. In Genesis 15 and verse 15, the Lord said, "Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age." The Lord was telling Abraham what was going to become of his descendants. They were going to spend time in some sort of servitude for a few hundred years. But with regard to you, Abraham, let me tell you what's going to happen to you. You're going to go to your fathers, and you're going to be buried at a good old age. Well, a lot of people have deduced since that time that because he was going to his fathers and going to be buried, they assume that he's going to be buried with his fathers. Okay, that's, I think, a concept that many of us have. Up at Byers Cemetery, a lot of my family's buried at Byers Cemetery. I mean, I got a whole string of folks up there. It's kind of like the family burial ground. And this is what, when people think about this promise to Abraham, they think about the Lord speaking about the family cemetery. But when we look at the account of what actually took place, we discover that Abraham's folks, they were buried in the Ur of Chaldea. Abraham, on the other hand, was buried in the land of Canaan. He didn't go to the family cemetery. He started the family cemetery when he buried his wife Sarah. And then he would join Sarah. His body was planted next to hers when it came time for him to die. So this is a misunderstanding that some people entertain when they read this particular verse of Genesis. But there's another one. Not only do we have the promise, we have the fulfillment of the promise. In Genesis 25 and verse 8, Abraham breathed his last breath. He died at a good old age. He was 175 years old. He was an old man in full years and was gathered to his people. Once again, we find that same statement again. Well, we know it wasn't the family cemetery, but he was gathered to his people. Where was his people? His people were in Hades. The only way Abraham could have been gathered to his people is if he went to Hades, because that's where his people were. We find through Abraham that when he drew his last breath, he stepped into eternity. He went to another place. I can't describe it. I can't see it. I can't touch it. I just believe in it by faith. But I know human beings are much too sophisticated, much too complicated to just die and go back to the earth. The very idea that all this began by accident, I think, is the biggest leap of faith that's ever been invented. That a big bang exploded and all of this that exists. I don't know, I don't understand how any person could possibly believe that all the design, all the engineering, just in the human race, not even taking into consideration the rest of the creation, just in the human race, my ability to talk to you and wiggle my fingers at the same time, only a genius mind could be behind the existence of you. And we're supposed to believe that it all happened, but bang? I don't think we're irrational. I think Mackey's irrational because that's what he believed. The difference is Mackey knows today. I don't know. I'm still here. I believe by faith. One day I will know. What I read about, what I think about will be reality. But for the moment, it's a matter of faith. Mackey, it's his reality now. It's his reality. David is another case in point. This is one of the most touching things I've ever read in my life. I'll never forget the first time I ever read it. It just absolutely took my breath. David's child was sick. He had Bathsheba had a son, and the son got sick as a very small infant. And David, I'm sure fearing that his sin might have been the cause of his child's suffering, and perhaps death was his fault. And he prayed to God, he begged God, he fasted. This went on for a week, day after day after day. He refused to eat, he refused to drink, he refused to bathe. And he stayed face down, praying to God to let his son live. And the child died. And his advisors were afraid that the king might lose his mind. After all of his grieving, what will he do now that the child is dead? And we take up right there in the account. David said, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept, for I said, who knows whether the Lord will be gracious to me that the child may live? I fasted and I prayed to God in hopes that God would let my baby live. But he died anyway. Now he's gone. Now, why would I fast? I was trying to persuade God to allow my boy to live, but that wasn't the final decision. The baby died. Why would I keep on fasting now? Can I bring him back? He knew he couldn't do that. I shall go to him, but he will not return to me. I was so happy the first time I read this. I think that was the first time I ever realized that we'll know our loved ones when we go to be with the Lord, at least our loved ones who are there. I shall go to him. I have the opportunity to go to him. It's my choice. I know my baby, he went to paradise. And I know I can go to paradise too. The thought of seeing a deceased child would, I think, overwhelm me. It would help motivate me to win the favor of the Lord, that I could be a partaker of his great mercy. We will know one another in the world to come. That raises a lot of questions we can't get into now. But be assured, we will know one another. Is this belief positively irrational, as Maggie said? I don't see anything irrational about it. It's called faith. Maggie believed in the Big Bang. What's that called? It's not based on any type of evidence. It can't be faith, because faith is based on evidence, right? Romans 10:17. So it's a belief he held that can't be based on evidence. It's what he wanted. It's not what he knew. It's not what was logical. It's not what was rational. It's what he wanted. And he can want all day long. But it won't change whatever reality is. Why do you want to go to heaven? Well, first thing come to my mind, I can't stay here. The second thing came to my mind, there's only one alternative to heaven. And I don't want to go there. When I first thought hell might be a reality, but I really didn't want to go to hell. You know, people always used to joke about going to hell. Oh, I'll meet you there. You know, some stupid things we used to say. But when you come to the point in time where you believe there is a hell, boy, you start singing a different song then. Because it's not a place somebody wants to go. Who wants to go into a burning barn and sit down on the floor and wait for the barn to collapse around them? Who would want to go to hell that's in their right mind if they believe hell's a reality? If you don't believe it's a reality, that's understandable. But if you believe there is hell, I don't want to go there. Hell is an awful, awful place. In the Bible, it's from a Greek word, Gehenna. Gehenna literally means the valley of Hinnom. There was a farm, if you will, that joined hard to Jerusalem. It belonged to a family by the name of Hinnom. And this family, eventually, the land went down to the sons. And when the Jews referred to, they'd say Gehenna, they were talking about the valley of the sons of Hinnom. That's what they meant. That's what Jesus said when he said there was a hell. He said there is a valley of the sons of Hinnom. Well, people's attention immediately turned to the valley of the sons of Hinnom. What does that mean? Well, at the time Jesus walked the earth, the valley was Jerusalem's garbage dump. That's where they dumped the city's garbage. Some say Jerusalem was inhabited by about 1 million people. I think it's probably closer to about 250,000. Nevertheless, that's a pile of garbage. And people would come out there and they would throw their garbage in the dump, and there was a fire going. And if you could imagine that much garbage going into the dump every day, day after day after day, you've got a fire burning that doesn't go out. It just keeps on burning because you keep adding fuel to it. It keeps on burning over and over and over. It's the dump. And in the dump, you know what goes to the dump? Dead animals. You find a dead groundhog, and you take the animal and you fling him out in the dump in the valley of the son of Hinnom. You find a dead deer. You don't know what killed it. You take the deer and you throw it out in the valley of the son of Hinnom. All your refuse goes into the valley of the son of Hinnom. All the garbage from Jerusalem goes to hell. When Jesus introduced this idea to the people, they thought of this garbage dump as being the place where people would go who were rejected by God. They were thrown away just like garbage. Horrible place. Absolutely horrible. We're running out of time. Let me do this quick. I don't know what hell looks like. I've tried to think of hell and I can't. It's a raging fire, and it's outer darkness. Fire, darkness. I don't understand that. What does it teach me? Fire bad. Fire painful. Darkness, you can't see. You don't know what's around you. The screams, the horrible sounds. People wailing and gnashing their teeth. You don't know who they are. It's darkness. What is it? What are we being taught? It's a horrible place. It's a horrible place. It's not the kind of place we want to go. It's not the kind of place where we want to live. But please listen. Every living person will go either to heaven or to hell. That's the only two choices there are. There's no purgatory. It's not going to happen. It's heaven or hell. Two choices. We go on to eternal life, or we go on to eternal condemnation. And if, God forbid, we lost our soul, we never get a do-over. Mercies ran out. There'll be no grace. As far as people in hell are concerned, there'll never be God again. Life. Oh, it's so much more important than I think we understand. Oh, life is all the good stuff we get to do. Hey, and I like good stuff as much as anybody. I got a go-kart. That's how much I like good stuff. I enjoy myself, and it's fun. But that's not why we're here. We get to take advantage of such things. But that's not why we're here. We're here to make a choice. What do I love? Do I love God, who gave me life? Or do I love the world and the things in the world? What will I choose? This is what it all comes down to, a decision. The biggest decision of my life. Choose God and live. You can do that right now.